Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Khaba, the original gunboat destroyer. This thing was terrifying back in the day. Used to be the tier 10 Russian destroyer. It's been moved over to the coal ships, and that's what we're going to take a look at today. Is it worth picking up the Khaba for coal these days? A lot of you probably got this thing a long time ago when it was tech tree, but for those of you that didn't, should you spend 240,000 coal on it? Well, if you're looking for a very, very strong gunboat, this could be a good option for you. We, of course, looked at Groningen the other day, and that's also a very good gunboat. That one's more focused on smoking up and using that to farm. This is less of a smoke ship. Although you can slot smokes on this thing, wouldn't necessarily recommend it. This is much more of a standard open water gunboat, I would say. Much more like the Khaba line. Except this ship, instead of using its insane maneuverability to tank, it's using some pretty bad maneuverability, but you have amazing armor. You have some 50mm plating on this ship, which means most cruisers and destroyers are just going to shatter with that HE. And even if they do manage to get some pens on you, you have 4 heals. This ship is very, very tanky. It's quite easy to get millions of potential damage in this ship. People want to kill it because it's so strong in the gunpowder, but they have a tough time doing so. Here's a situation, though, where we're going to see some of the weaknesses of the Khaba, and that is definitely this maneuverability. It's almost comical how bad the maneuverability is on this ship. If we take a look at all of the tier 10 destroyers and sort them by rudder shift, Khaba comes out the worst, and it's really not even close. The second worst rudder shift of any destroyer tier 10 is 6.3 seconds. That's the closest to Khaba. Khaba is 11.1. Absolutely ridiculous. It's pretty linear, I guess. Very, very subtle changes. You get 5 seconds, 5.3 seconds, 5.4, 5.5, 5.6, 5.7, 6.3 on Elbing, and then 11.1. Just a shocking drop. And that was a nerf made to this ship a very, very long time ago. Something you need to know about going in is that this ship used to have much better maneuverability. It used to have much better torpedoes, and it was a menace. This is a very long time ago, though, now. And one of the things they nerfed was this rudder shift, and it's why this ship can feel a little bit clumsy. You're going to take torps in this ship, I think, especially running that smoke, for example. You got to be very, very careful. Don't have a hydro here. But in exchange for that absolutely abysmal rudder shift, you're relatively quick. Not quite as fast as those French DDs, but you're still pretty fast, especially with this engine boost up. And crucially, you have a very, very nice reload on these main guns. You're not focused on your reload booster giving you that burst damage like a Khaba. You just have very good, consistent DPM. You get 182,000 HE DPM, 249,000 AP DPM, which is a very good ammo type on this ship to be using. As we have 130mm guns, they have pretty decent pen, allowing you to get some good damage into battleships, their upper belts, cruisers as well. Definitely would recommend looking at the target you're farming, probably a battleship, let's be honest. Anytime you have both or the only fire point in the superstructure lit, depending on if they have fire prevention or not, once that's lit up, I'd really recommend, if you're broadside, just swap over to the AP, because going for those bow and stern fires is a little bit too greedy and oftentimes results in very little damage, where this AP is going to do monstrous damage. In fact, I did a ton of damage today by using armor piercing on the Khaba. I used it a lot more than I thought I would. This ship is well known for being a fire spammer, just burning down battleships very easily. But I used a lot of AP, and I think we're going to see why it is so powerful. So if you have this ship or thinking about it, don't be afraid to swap over to that armor piercing. Kassard here taking a fight with us at long range. Why would he be doing that? That seems like a really, really bad idea. Kassard has terrible arcs in comparison to us. Also, almost the same DPM. He's a little better, but he's not going to be hitting. Oh, it was bait. Nice bait by this guy. He did catch me with that torpedo. Always got to ask yourself, why would this guy be taking this engagement? Doesn't seem like a good engagement for them. Be aware of those torpedoes. The ship does not maneuver very quickly at all. You got to decide between prop or rudder mod, and if you're going to be taking the legendary upgrade, which I am in this game, well, you're probably going to want rudder since your rudder shift is so bad. But that leaves you vulnerable to torps like that. So nice bait there from the Khazar did manage to clip us, but we still have some healing to do, and we're still very much in this game. Hopefully we can finish off this Shima here. It's going dark, and we do manage to get him. Those shell arcs are so nice on this ship, I gotta say. And having the reload as a consistent thing all the time is so much nicer than Khabarovsk. Khabarovsk does have that boost to give you instantaneous DPM, which is very nice. But if you're just farming battleships, it's nice and chill to have your full DPM all the time on this thing. But now that I've brought it up, we may as well talk about the elephant in the room, this legendary upgrade. It's not cheap. And if you don't have a lot of ships in this game, you might not have any research points or even unlocked the research bureau yet. And I think Khaba really likes this legendary upgrade. It's not necessary. In fact, a lot of these games you're going to see after this one, or maybe the next one, I actually just totally removed the legendary upgrade to see how it played without it, because you're not likely to have it. It's very, very powerful. It gives you back a lot of range. That was another nerf that happened to this ship way early on, was nerfing down the range that this ship was able to get, because at long range, good luck dealing with this thing. And this legendary upgrade gives you that back, but it goes in the 5th upgrade slot, which takes away either concealment, which not a lot of people ran on this ship, or it took away the improved rudder mod. And that means you have a very sluggish rudder. That's why I said you have to choose between rudder or propulsion in slot 4. If you don't have the legendary upgrade, then just run rudder slot 5, propulsion slot 4, and you're relatively maneuverable. But you don't have the range, and that can be a little bit awkward in today's World of Warships. We all know how much more passive games are these days. It can be a little awkward with 13.5 kilometers range. Getting up over 14 is really, really nice. So if you like Khaba, I'd recommend looking into getting its legendary upgrade. Personally, I do enjoy playing it much more with its legendary mod, but it's still very workable without it. In fact, take a look at our healing. We can't quite heal 5,000 HP per heal. That's still a very good heal. We get 4 heals. That's incredibly tanky. But you're going to see a little later, we get over 6,000 healing per heal anytime we're not running this legendary mod, because that's one of the downsides. It reduces your consumable duration by 20%. You get 20% less healing, 20% less speed boost anytime you're using this legendary upgrade. So a little bit of downsides there. You could even argue, and I might even subscribe to it, that this ship doesn't need the legendary upgrade to perform very well. I was kind of surprised by that, but looking into it more, there's a lot of downsides. There's a lot of things you're giving up for this legendary upgrade. The extra few kilometers of range, though, are very, very nice. I really, really got to say, that is very important here. And I almost forgot, actually, you get 6% reload out of this legendary upgrade as well. So if you want the full DPM here, which is kind of insane, you get a, 3.5 second reload on Khaba with these guns? That's kind of insane with this legendary upgrade. But you do lack a little bit on the healing. You are going to need to use that range to help you stay alive a little more than you otherwise would with that extra HP and speed boost you'd get without that legendary upgrade. Real quick though, poor Delny. If you got yourself a Delny and thought, wow, this ship isn't all that amazing, you have Khaba to thank for that. This ship was so good back in the day that when they removed it from the tech tree, added it to the coal destroyers, they replaced it with a pretty bad ship, in my opinion. Delny lacks a lot of DPM in comparison to Khaba. So don't necessarily look at that ship, the Delny. Maybe you've played it before, maybe you have it, and think, I don't really want to get the Khaba. It's still a really, really strong ship, the Khaba. Much better than Delny, in my opinion. This game here, we are playing the flank, and that's really what you're going to want to do in Khaba. You don't really want to play middle of the map. Anytime you can play the flank, limit who can fire at you, angle to the most of the enemy team like we're going to do now. I push a little bit too far in, but hey, we managed to catch off this Delny off guard. So we'll finish him off, and now we get to farm the battleship. Feels good now to get this free damage on this poor Hawk. But this is really what you want to be doing in the Khaba, using your speed maneuverability that's a little bit lacking And you play in a safer position on the flank, limiting who can fire at you, limiting who's close to you, crossfires, all that. And you really control the engagements that way. The ship does not have good concealment, of course, so you're not controlling your engagement through that means. It really is down to positioning yourself towards the flanks and limiting who can fire at you at a given time. That's really, really important. Fire chance in the ship, of course, is absolutely wonderful, so this poor hawk is going to get burnt down rather quickly. I guess we should probably talk about the torpedoes. There's really not much to say here. Another nerf that happened to Khaba a very long time ago. It lost its 10-kilometer torps, so now you only have 6-kilometer torps on this one. So really not all that useful. Maybe for YOLO rushes you can use them. Didn't think I really landed any torpedoes here. They do okay damage, I guess, but they're so slow that hitting them is very difficult. 19,500 alpha damage, but they go 53 knots and have a 6-kilometer range. That's really not all that useful. To be fair though, 0.6 kilometer detection is better than deep waters. Yu Yang has 0.8 kilometer detect. So the original deep waters is kind of what Khaba has. Unfortunately, they have no range, so it's really, really difficult to make any use of them. And now in this match, I was going to push over and farm the rest of the enemy team, but we've already seen that. Let's move on to some more examples of where this ship can shine. Moving on to this game, we have 6,240 HP to heal. So that means we're not running the legendary upgrade. In fact, here I'm running concealment upgrades. This is a full conceal build on this ship. We still have decent DPM, but it allows us to play a little more comfortably. I always talk about the difference between your detection and your gun range. Gives you a rough idea of how comfortable the ship is going to be to play. Running a Khaba as a full gun build without legendary upgrade, it can be a little uncomfortable, especially in carrier games. It can be very difficult to have an impact on the game without feeling like you're just losing a lot of HP because you're the closest one in and spotted, everyone's going to shoot at you. This Marceau plays it really smart. I'm not sure why he took the engagement earlier, but here he's playing very smart. Trying to use the island as cover, but also using armor piercing. We mentioned that 50mm plate before. Well, it's going to shatter his HE. But if I'm broadside, that AP is going to arm on that 50mm plate, and it's actually a weakness then. So he's getting some really, really nice damage into us. And at closer ranges, Marceau DPM is no joke, so we should be a little bit worried about that. I am going to do a bit of border scrubbing here. I'm sorry, it's a little slimy. I apologize, but I think we probably would have got that Marceau anyway. Look at that heal, by the way. That's kind of insane. Bit of a super heal on this Khaba. That happened relatively recently, actually, so pretty nice buff to Khaba. Maybe a year ago now, actually. Maybe time is flying a little faster than I think, but if you haven't seen it, this heal is very nice, so if you have Khaba, you should definitely give it a go again. Baji here, pushing in, Musashi pushing in. This is what we want to see. Our fire chance could do a little better this match, but I'm going to swap over to the AP here rather quickly. Baji only has a tiny little superstructure to farm, so not the best for HE spamming. And when he's so broadside, battleship upper belts, man. It's so juicy for the armor piercing. We have, what, 27,000 damage here as we're swapping over to the AP. We're going to have 100k pretty quickly. Yep, these salvos are incredible. He has to angle to us, of course, but also then my teammates. He's taking a lot of pressure, so Khaba on a flank. Pretty classic thing to deal with back in, what, 2016, 2017? It's the bane of my existence for a very long time. It got some nerfs, but it does that these days reasonably well, too. It has been buffed a little bit thanks to this legendary upgrade, as well as this extra healing that we're getting in this match. Still really not lighting the fires, so I should probably swap over to this Musashi again. It's a bit of a risky play, certainly. We don't really know where some of the enemies are. DDs could be coming back for us from the other side of the map, but I think we have enough room to work with. The problem, I guess, is going to be the carrier. I haven't really mentioned it yet because I don't want to make these videos and just complain about carriers and DD and subs all the time, but you saw in the first video how I died in the first match. Yeah, that rudder shift does not help you much against subs, and I'm sure you can imagine how it fares against carriers. And if you can't, don't worry, I got you covered here in a little bit. Rudder shift is required for dodging carrier and submarine salvos, and with this ship being so sluggish, it's going to take a lot of pain from that, especially if you go off on your own like this in a carrier game. The other thing to consider is this ship is pretty large. So even though it has that armor, you can get hit by a lot of the carrier's damage, and that's gonna hurt a lot, especially from dive bombers, for example. That is a real pain point that this ship has to deal with. Sure, we get some healing, but I'm not a fan of carriers. I think you all know that. I'm not a fan of subs. I think you all know that. So we're gonna just leave it there, and you get to enjoy this, the rest of this game. Now we should probably talk about these consumables a little bit more. We're getting close to the smoke game, and I want to really try and convince you that smoke is not the way I would prefer to see you play this game. Maybe smoke is good. Maybe that's the way you like to play Khaba, and all the power to you. Continue to do it. But there's a few reasons why I really think heal is the way to go. Number one, it's just a lot of HP in your back pocket. For a gunboat that doesn't have the best concealment nor the best maneuverability, you might take a lot of damage here and there. So having that healing in your back pocket allows you to stay in the match, in the fight, for much longer. The other thing to consider is going to be spotting damage. And do you have teammates spotting for you? Do you spawn on a flank where you're the only destroyer and you're a smoke cob? How is that going to work, right? The thing I really like about running the heal Khaba is that you're always in open water. You're always in a position to be spotting for your team. In this game, we already have 47,000 spotting damage. I have more spotting damage than actual damage in this game so far. We'll try and change that here, don't worry, but it is really important to note that. I talked about that in the Groningen video where both myself and some of my teammates smoked up without realizing they were the ones spotting. I did that against the Zeton in that second match, I believe. Not a great look, but hey, it's common, it's easy to do, it's very simple to just get in your head. I'm gonna smoke up and farm this guy, it's gonna be great. And then you were the one spotting, and they go dark. With Khaba, without the smoke, you really don't have that issue, and that provides a lot of value to your team. Not only in spotting, but if they happen to shoot a few salvos at you and you manage to dodge, or you can tank it with this armor plating or this healing, that's just extra damage that's not going into your teammates. So a lot of utility you're bringing to your team that way that otherwise gunboat DDs might not feel that useful, right? They can't contest caps nearly as easily. They get outspotted. It's a little bit tough that way. Where Khaba, by tanking for your team, potential damage, by spotting for your team, you're bringing a lot of utility there that is required. Now, if there's carriers in your games, there's some differences in how much use your spotting is actually going to be, since the carrier is just better than you at spotting pretty much all the time. But here we're up to 90k spotting already. We got a lot of teammates in the middle of the map with open shots on the guys in the north here. And now that our Sherman friend has unfortunately sunk, well, we're the ones spotting all of these ships over here, at least until the carrier comes over. So that's going to give us a lot of spots and help our team out a ton. So if you're going to take a smoke, you might not be quite as useful. That's at least what I think about generally this difference between the smokes and the heal. I also just prefer staying at speed in Khaba. Slowing down in smokes, you're a pretty easy torpedo threat or magnet there, and it's easy to die rather quickly in those smokes. Given Khaba's maneuverability and lack of concealment, you also can just take some random damage where you get spotted and you're not expecting it, and then you're down half your health or more. Yeah, we got over 100k spotting in that game in a Khaba. I did manage to get a little more than that in damage, but still, a bit of a hybrid role there, bringing a lot of utility for our team. In this one, I have smoke. I did try it. It went okay, I guess. We're gonna get some decent damage, but I still probably played it too much like an open water gunboat. In the early game here, you're going to notice that it allows us to play relatively close to this A cap without taking too much damage. Potentially, the enemy destroyer there gets spotted, and we can do a lot of damage from very close range. Khaba has excellent arcs, of course. We can do good damage into destroyers at range, but the ability that the smoke gives you is to apply a lot of pressure to a cap zone or an area of the map without being forced away. If I was just shooting here, you better believe all these guys would open up on me. Since it's a Khaba at close range, let's kill it, because that's such an annoying target to deal with. But since I'm smoked up, I can stay a little bit closer, and if we get the spotting, that is going to help our team on this cap. But you notice I need someone to spot for me. And on this flank, we just did not have another destroyer. Our Schultz is on the other side of the map. Sure, if there was a Shima or some sort of spotting torping DD, then this would go extremely well. But we don't. And now I'm relying on my teammates, maybe not being as useful for them. Although there is still a carrier in this one to spot for us. Fortunately, Harugumo is running the 8-kilometer torps, so don't eat the torps there. I did angle in time, but you saw how long it took me to actually turn to angle. Yeah, that rudder shift, we're a little bit sluggish, and I really don't want to pop my engine boost here to give myself better propulsion, because I might need that later once my smoke has run out. So the idea here being you smoke up and use that to freely farm. I haven't done a great job of it here, but it allows us to get a little bit of chip damage in early game without really risking our ship. And that's really what's important in destroyers, cruisers, even battleships to a certain extent, although those should be tanking to apply pressure. But cruisers and DDs, you don't want to give up all your HP early because you're so powerful in the late game, especially if you have some HP to work with. But in this one, we use our smoke, and we really haven't taken too much HP. So now I have the opportunity to use my engine boost after the smoke to do some open watering until my smoke is back up. We've repositioned now, and I guess I sort of underestimated the enemy team's ability to push in on this flank. I was thinking, okay, the enemy team, they've been kiting, they've been passive all game so far. They'll turn away as soon as there's a smoke. The problem is Rhode Island has a radar. Not the best positioning of the smoke on my part, I gotta say. So we're gonna have to angle to this guy and hope that battleship dispersion means he misses. 9-kilometer radar, there it is. And I mean, I should have just pushed up a little bit more with the smoke or been a little further back. If I had just positioned my smoke next to one of these islands where once he radars me, I could just zip behind the island, then I'm safe. It would have been easy. But no, I did not position it correctly. Perhaps I'm not showing smoke Khaba justice. Certainly, it could be played better than this, but I mean, healing is just so nice when you get caught off guard like that to just bring back some of that HP. Rhode Island, pretty accurate. That HE will pen the 50mm plating. It's battleship HE, pens a lot, so we take quite a bit of damage. So now we're gonna have to use these smokes to help us stay alive, and they do. They can help us stay alive quite a bit. The rest of this game here, there is a cyclone. And I should mention that it's pretty awkward to play a Cyclone Cob because no matter what you're doing, you're just going to be spotted the instant you run into an enemy ship in a Cyclone. And that's where maybe smokes are good. I'm trying to come up with reasons, guys. I really am. If you smoke up before the enemy ship gets within 8 kilometers of you, then if your teammates are spotting for you, again, you do rely on your teammates to spot, you can sit in the smoke in a cyclone and still get damage without dying. So maybe that's the utility, I suppose. It is tough. Cyclones are very tough for a ship like the Khaba without good concealment. You can't really play around that. This ship loves to be at medium to long range, at least as long as it's gun range, to be farming ships. And last, well, we just have a little bit of therapy, I suppose. This is really the last clip I've got for you guys. We'll take a look at the builds. I played a lot of different builds. It was really interesting to try a bunch of different ones. I still prefer Legendary Upgrade, but it is interesting to note that the healing is much more powerful when you don't have the Legendary Upgrade. And that maybe makes up for that lack of range, as well as the DPM. 6% reload's no joke. You still get the opportunity to slot reload mod in the 6th slot as well, so pretty nice there. And if you're wondering, no, we actually can't run range mod in the 6th slot. That's one of these ships that does not have that available to it. So as always, when we're looking at these coal ships or any of these premiums, definitely comment down below what you think of this ship if you have it. And those of you thinking about getting this one can check some other people's opinions on it in the comments down below. For me though, it's a pretty solid gunboat DD. It's unique, certainly. Even though it was a tech tree ship, it's still very unique if you don't have it. It's a little bit hard to play. You will take a lot of damage with this concealment and rudder shift times. You can see that there. That's pretty rough to deal with. I think it's 11.1 gun range by stock. And for me though, I do really enjoy this legendary upgrade. I wouldn't say this makes or breaks the ability to get Khaba actually. You certainly can run steering gears and then propulsion here and have a pretty good time, especially since the healing is improved when you're not running this legendary upgrade. 20% less healing, 20% less engine boost. That is a rough thing to deal with, and I think it's probably worth it, but this ship can function without it, and I think that's a good thing. It allows you to get this ship without feeling like you need to have unlocked the research barrow and then grind a bunch of research points before you even get this ship. High barrier to entry there. Here, of course, like I said, no range mod upgrade allowed. That makes it difficult. If you're running the legendary upgrade, though, personally, I prefer it with rudder shift. So that's what I would run. Still, 9-second rudder. You get down to like 6.5-second rudder if you're running the steering gears here and propulsion mod here. The maneuverability is not bad then, but still you're lacking in concealment. As for the builds, there's a few different ways you can go about it. I would recommend you start like that pretty much every time. The extra guaranteed 3,500 HP is great, and that does buff your healing, right? It's percentage based on your total HP. So if you're wanting to run the full HP build and get as much as you can out of your heals and survive as long as you can, personally, I do prefer that. I would go like that, and then probably running something like this. You can either go incoming fire alert to make you aware of long-range shells coming at you, allowing you to dodge easier, or even grease the gears. You already have a 10.3-second turret traverse, so it's not as necessary. For me, I would go with a build like this. If you don't have this many points, then I probably would start like this, actually. You know, if you're missing 4 points, for example, I would give up that 4th heal. You're not going to use it every game, and honestly, it might be a little bit too much healing. You might even argue to go full DPM build. I'm not sure. But 9.7 kilometers of detection. Notice no concealment here. But that's not too bad with 14.8 kilometers of gun range. So I'm going to leave my build like this. This is the one I like. But you could run a conceal build if you wanted to. I ran it like this, and that's perfectly reasonable as well. You're giving up 10% reload from Fearless Brawler, but it's a perfectly fine way to play. You still have like a 4.1 second reload on these guns, which is amazing. That gives you a little bit more range to work with between your concealment and your gun firing range, making it a little more comfortable to play. You could even run double concealment. That way you're not having the penalty to your healing that Legendary mod gives you. There's a lot of different ways. Personally, though, again, I do prefer this one. Gets you the most damage output and still retains some of your survivability, giving up 5% here on main battery and AA specialist. And Adrenaline Rush is just always really good. By the time you're on 3/4 HP, which is pretty easy in this ship because you have so much healing, you can kind of hold your HP at a little bit lower value, making more use of Adrenaline Rush. You're already getting most of the way to that 5%. So AR is such a really strong skill. I don't want to give that one up. So I'm going to leave it like that for the build. And just real quick, here is the armor layout. 50 mil plating, 50 mil plating. It's very strong. If you don't pen 50 and you're at close range and maybe you don't have AP or you haven't swapped to it, you can hit the bow. And the superstructure is rather large. This is a big superstructure for a destroyer. Not typical that we would see on this class of ships. So aim a little higher with your HE and you're going to do good damage there as well. But if you have AP like that Marceau had, that was smart. You can just get full pens and do a ton of damage to this thing. But that's going to do it for the Khaba today. A very interesting destroyer throughout the history of World of Warships. It's in a pretty strong state right now, I gotta say. Some of that has to do with this legendary upgrade. I personally enjoy it, but it can work pretty well without it as well. This extra healing that it gets these days is really strong. It's very difficult to get one of these out of the match if you know what you're doing. If you get one healed, if you push in too hard or you get surprised, you can die quickly in it. Don't get me wrong, but it's a very strong ship these days, and I think it's worth getting if you're interested in that open water gunboat role. To be fair, though, there's also a Marceau in this coal available for coal at tier 10 as of open water gunboat DD. So I'm gonna have to take a look at that and see which one would be better. We have things like Sherman as well. Might not get a Khaba over those two, we'll see, but Khaba's an interesting one. Thank you very much for watching and have a great rest of your day.